Just a few points before I open the floor for questioning. We do want to make the most of the time that we have. The first is, and I think this has been mentioned, and Professor Masalha just reiterated. I'm, in another world, I'm an activist. Many of you will know. I pose today. I'm an imposter today as an academic, but in reality, I'm an activist, and I'm proud to be part of those demonstrations. And I have to say that the most solid, the strongest, amongst the many elements that make up these demonstrations are the non-Zionist Jews. And it is to them that we owe a huge debt, because they are the ones whom we point to whenever we're accused of anti-Semitism. So really a huge salute to them. And also, I think that today, the fact that everyone here today is an academic and that we come from various universities, the student movement up and down the country and across the United States. And let's not forget that these are the soon to become the leaders, political, societal, economic. These are soon to become the leaders of our countries. And if they were equipped with the right set of questions and the right set of answers, then, who knows? I'm, just as hopeful as Ilan expressed. So again, saluting them from today. I'd like to point to two things before I open the door to questions. The first is, I urge you all, for those who haven't already, please do go back and watch the Labour Files, which was done by Al Jazeera a few years back, 3-part series, which is absolutely eye-opening. I would urge you to watch and also to share that documentary. Also, last week, an article published in the Middle East Eye, and Middle East Eye are amongst us today also, by David Hurst, the historian, about whether today's Zionists are going the way of yesterday's Crusaders. I think an important, quite fantastic historical essay. So those are a few points. Now, the rules are as such. We will take questions and try, please, not to go into statements, long statements. Questions, if you wish, direct them to either Ilan or to any one of the panels. I'm going to bring in all of today's panels in answering and addressing the questions and statements brought up. I'll take them in batches of 3. And I'll try to come from various places of the hall. We have roving mics. Who's in charge of the roving mic? Yes? Okay, Kieran. I'm going to start with the gentleman here on my right, and then I'm going to go to the gentleman there at the back, and then the lady there in the 4th row.
Thank you very much to all the panel members, especially Ilan Pappé. Until I'd read your books, 10 Myths About Israel and the Ethnic Cleansing, I think many years of longing for a comprehensive answer hadn't been answered, but yours did. So thank you very much. For many of us growing in the 70s and 80s, campaigning on the ground, we didn't have that. So this is brilliant. I'm very jealous of the fact that the book has already come out and I haven't seen it, but I saw it in someone's table yesterday, but I'm also here to read it thoroughly. But I've actually interrupted my campaign trail. I'm standing as an independent candidate in Bethnal Green and Stepney in this election, trying to give Keir Starmer's Labour Party a bloody nose in this election. Ilan, I know you are an amazing person. I'd like to invite you to our... But would it be wrong in echoing what you had just said, and that is true freedom will come for the Palestinians when we see the end of Israel?
Thank you, Ajmal Masroor. Thank you very much, and all the best with your campaign. The gentleman there at the back, yes, please. And then the lady here in the front, 4th row. أسئلة كل 3 أسئلة. Every 3 questions. ألم.
Sorry, my question is, in your research, have you found examples of exceptionally strange bedfellows and alliances for Zionism? For example, in India, the Hindutva alliance, which is ironic because they're fans of Hitler. So are there other examples that you've seen in other parts of the world?
Thank you very much. And the lady here. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for an illuminating book. Ilan, you speak about the collapse of the Zionist project as being imminent and Jews and Arabs living together in a free Palestine. And indeed, that's the hope for all of us, I'm sure, that are here. But you're a historian. We also are very cognizant that millions of people around the world support this. The issue is, what is the political agency that is going to achieve this? After all, we can't be optimistic that the Arab bourgeois regime, Saudi Arabia, is going to do anything. Fatah has failed, the PA has failed. You know, I mean, the Hamas also is a problem. The regional powers are corrupt. The Israeli Zionist bourgeois left, like Gantz and, Meretz and all of them, pretty hopeless. So really, where do you see this coming from? We've got a huge movement. We have to organize them.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to address?
Should I start? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think the first and the third question are really the same, so I'll address them in a moment, and I'll go first to the second one about the strange allies or fellow travelers to the Zionist movement. I don't know if they were strange, but in a sense, like you mentioned the Hindutva and the BJP in India, I don't know if they are strange. It's very clear, and I think Radha mentioned it as well, how many anti-Semitic ideologies were supporting Zionism. And in the book, I bring a conversation between Balfour and Weizmann, Chaim Weizmann, who was the leader of the Zionist movement after Theodor Herzl. And Balfour tells him that he met the daughter of Wagner, the German composer who was a sympathizer of Nazism, Cosima Wagner. And they share this kind of ideas about the Jews, that they talk about it as if it's accepted to talk about these negative features that Wagner, as an anti-Semite, was disseminating in Germany. Think about the leader of Hungary today, Orban, a fascist, an anti-Semite if ever was one, in the sense of anti-Jewish, and the greatest supporter of Israel. Leaders of fascism in France and Italy are great supporters. The EDL is now donning itself with the Israeli flag in demonstrations. So, yes, I don't know if to call them strange fellow travelers, rather than maybe the genuine fellow travelers of a racist ideology. Now, the first and the third question, as I said, had a lot in it. Three very short points about it. One, as an academic, I'm talking about the beginning of the end of the Zionist project. And the beginning of an end is a long period, can be a long period, unfortunately. And when structures, ideological structure collapse, it can take time in terms of historical time. And these are very dangerous times, because the attempt to keep the structure together can make the leaders of the structure even more brutal and fierce than they were. And we saw it in the last days of apartheid South Africa. So we are into a very bad period in the next year or two, very worrying, not only for the people of the Gaza Strip, but also for the people of the West Bank, who already are beginning to feel the genocidal policies there, and the Palestinian minority in Israel that usually is totally forgotten in these kind of conversation. 2 million people who are also in danger, existential danger. However, in historical terms, the end is coming, and the collapse is coming. In fact, the 7th of October is like an earthquake that shook a building that already had cracks in the foundation. But it widened the cracks extensively. And therefore, I think this accelerates the collapse. What will come instead of the collapse is a very good question, because we have a failed state in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen. Not always a collapse of a state is immediately replaced by something better. There are decolonizations in Africa and Southeast Asia that were not replaced by better regimes for the people. It's the agency of the Palestinian national movement. We are waiting for its finding the way of uniting its forces, restructuring probably its liberation organization. I have a lot of faith in the younger Palestinian generation that they would be able to provide the consensual leadership and structure. We need them to lead the way into the future. It's high time that the Israeli Jews would hear from the Palestinians what they think about the future, rather than the Palestinians hearing all the time what the Israelis think about the future and responding to this. We need this leadership. The potential for this leadership is there. I think from the days that Rada's grandfather was, we have now a very sophisticated, educated, well-versed young Palestinian generation who are all over the place, and they would show us the way forward. And it would be a free Palestine, and probably quite a lot of Israeli Jews would feel they don't want to live in a post-apartheid state, like some whites didn't want to live in a post-apartheid state. This is not a good enough reason not to pray for this. They might leave or they might stay. It's not the main issue. The main issue is, can we liberate Palestine, and can the liberation bring a much better political structure and life, first for the Palestinians, but also for the Jews who are there, and maybe also influence the rest of the Arab world.
Thank you. And Rada?
Yes, just a couple of additional points on that last point, on the question of the future state that would replace the current state of Israel. I mean, two issues which are really very important. First of all, the aim of a democratic state in which the people who live within it are equal citizens is, it seems to me, is inevitable. If providing that the Israelis are not enabled to ethnically cleanse the Palestine, so that there are Palestinians remaining, it seems to me there is no escape from this as an endpoint. Not talking in terms of how wonderful and all the rest. Really, it is inevitable. That's the first thing. The second issue that I wanted to follow up on what Ilan was saying, there really is a problem for the Palestinians about leadership. It's very paralyzing to all the excellent ideas, the energies that have been released by October 7th, the way people are, in the enthusiasm, that wave of newly energized. It's sad but true that there is an absence of leadership, and this is extremely serious. I personally don't know exactly how it will be resolved, but I know that without it, all these aims, ideas, and so on will not be realized.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both Ilan and Rada. I think And on the question of agency, the Palestinian agency is essential, i.e. Palestinians would have to take the leading role. I do expect some Israelis to join us, and I do think we can see fractures within that Israeli society. But settler colonial societies actually don't change easily, and don't change quickly, and don't change for the better. And it's certainly becoming slightly more fascist and more racist and more out of touch with reality. And a lot of Israeli liberals are moving out, and who is remaining within Israel is more fanatical. But I do think actually the Palestinian society it has been resisting for a whole century now, and generation after generation, that society does bring up new leadership. But the current octogenarian leadership in Palestine is not working, and I do agree with Ghada. And that leadership, qualitative leadership, the caliber of the Mandelas and the Tutus, and it has got to emerge from within that society, enormous amount of energies. And that society does throw up new generation and new leadership. It's a question of watching the signs but I do think along the lines also there are many threats to us Palestinians, and the dangers haven't passed. I do think that isolated society, that boycotted society is more likely to continue its crimes, genocide, atrocities, attempts to ethnic cleanse Palestinians actually from parts of the West Bank. We know there's a war going on in the West Bank, which is not reported on the BBC, much of the focus on release of 4 Israeli hostages. Nobody mentioned the killing of 92 Palestinians at the same time, by the way. The British media hasn't mentioned that. So there's a lot of risk, danger, threats to us, crimes, genocide. And I think we need to be aware that the more that settler colonial society is isolated, the more it's likely to be savage, by the way, and the more it is likely to go, the question of crusaders and that sort of thing. So that the threats for us, existential threats for us as Palestinians are still there. But we are still there, half of us are still there, about 7.5 million Palestinians are still living between the river and the sea. And so I think potentially, we surviving and resisting and looking for long-term solutions, rather instant solutions or magical solutions or quick solutions or quick fixes within a year or two. I think we need to have deep breath, and we Palestinians especially, we need to build up our own leadership and to think about slightly medium-term and long-term things, because I think if you expect magical solution and miraculous solutions after this horrific genocide in Gaza, I think you are going to be disappointed. So I think it's a question of persistent. It's a question of we are incredibly resilient people, and I've seen so much resilience in Gaza itself, actually. How incredibly, the Palestinian resistance in Gaza for 8 months is something I did not expect. That resistance in Palestine will allow the international movement to grow and become bigger. Resist, you'll have support and you'll have solidarity. If we stop resisting, our solidarity will fade away, actually. So when we talk about these students, these mass movements, these mass things, I think they are linked to the question of resisting in Palestine. And that's the heart of the matter.
Thank you. Before I come to another round, just a couple of things. I was, the irony sometimes, the laughability sometimes. The fact that Israeli press, many headlines are celebrating the rise of far-right parties in the European elections, forgetting somehow that these are the fascists of yesterday, and they were the ones who drove the Jews out of Europe and created the pogroms and the such is in itself laughable. And also in regards with what you've just said, Noor, and I think that most people here would agree. listening to the news just before I came on the BBC, and the statement by the US State Secretary, Antony Blinken, saying, you know, it's a very novel event that 14 members have all said yes, and now everyone is waiting for Hamas. The whole world now is waiting for Hamas. I mean, I don't know whether he realized what he was saying, whether he was advised or not, but you know, I think in retrospect, I think he said something that he would come to regret. But in any case, the next round of questions, the gentleman here. I will take the gentleman there next to the wall, and someone from the back. Yes, at the very back, the final row. So the gentleman here, please.
Thank you, Professor Ina, for supporting Palestinian cause. First question, please. Do you see any difference between lobbying in United States and Europe countries, Britain including? And do you think there are any, if Donald Trump come president, will we be support more from Biden to support Israel state? And finally, please, how do you see the problem now inside Israeli society between the secularism and between the extreme Zionist religion? And we see yesterday Gallant, he resigned from Benny Gantz, and Gallant don't vote against low recruitment of Haredim people. How do you see this will be influence in Israel state? Thank you.
The gentleman there, fifth row, fourth row, next to the wall, yes. No, if you can wait for the microphone, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is around a concept that I've been very puzzled with for the last 8 months around Muslim Zionists. That according to Islam and the Quran, it has been written according to various verses that Allah has stated clearly that Israel belongs to the Jews. So what I've understood is that according to the Hasbara that I have reviewed, Israel has positioned itself as the steward of anti-Islamization and that steward against the fight between the civilizations, the Western civilizations, and Islamic fundamentalism. So how do you view these claims that what the Muslim Zionists are saying, that the establishment or the existence of Israel is actually enshrined in the Quran? So I was asking, why didn't then Israeli planes, instead of distributing leaflets, distribute the verses of the Quran to the people in Gaza so that they could have vacated? Then they said the 1/5 of Israeli population are actually untrustworthy and they are hell-bent on the destruction of Israel, so all the Arab Israelis. So what's your views on this Muslim Zionist views, please?
The gentleman at the very back of the hall.
Okay, thank you. So I'm from Colombia. The Colombian president say, if Palestine dies, humanity dies. When he was breaking relations with Israel. So my question is, what I believe is very important for all states to follow it, but my question is, how important it is to isolate the Zionist state if we want to build a better world?
Thank you. Okay, then.
Yeah. The first question was about the US and UK in differences. Of course, there are differences because the United States political system works differently than the British system. For instance, the electoral system works differently, and therefore the lobbies for Israel and Zionism adapted themselves to the political reality. Also, lobbying in America is a bit more complex because it's part of the regular work of politics. But I think that despite these differences, it is the Anglo-Saxon world, if you want. You can include Australia in this. This whole section of Western civilization of the English-speaking world, and they have their allies, of course, in the continent as well. They decided to deal with the racism that they have shown for centuries against the Jews by getting easily out of this really dark history by supporting the colonization of Palestine and now the destruction of Palestine. So, sorry. So I think while there are tactical differences and characteristical differences because of the different political realities and system, it is, as I say in the book, I talk about it as a relay race that you have in the Olympics, when one runner passes the baton to another runner. So in many ways, Britain passed the baton to America as being the major international actor that provides immunity. So, but in the book itself, you can see more about the differences. Second question was about Donald Trump. I think one of the problems of the lobby in America would be that they as I show in the book, they have decided, probably since 2005, to put almost all the eggs in the basket of the Republican Party. And are less interested in the Democratic Party, although they can see that the inertia of being pro-Israeli in the Democratic Party of a certain generation still works. But where I think they might be wrong is that they don't fully understand the difference in the Republican camp between the supremacist right-wing conservatives and the Christian Zionists. Christian Zionists probably would support Israel, but there is an isolationist element in the Republican Party. For example, those who did not want to support the Ukraine, not in the sense of not supporting it symbolically, but refused to use American taxpayer to pay money for weapons going to the Ukraine and Israel, if you remember, when it was together. So I think it's, I was in the heart of Arab America, Michigan, Dearborn, and I was asked again and again, what do you suggest to us? Should we vote for Trump or Biden or not vote, which is actually voting? And of course, you're very careful in not being an American to tell people how to vote. But I said, unfortunately, this is a tactical question and not a strategic question. Namely, both of them are bad news for the Palestinians. And both of them, at least initially, are good news for the fascist Israel that is unfolding in front of our eyes. However, and therefore I suggested investing more in strategic thinking rather than in the tactical question of whom to vote for in November and leave it for people individually to decide what to do, because the two choices are terrible. There is no real independent candidate, unfortunately, in America they could go for. The question of the implosion of the Israeli society from within, I think I write about it in the book as well, towards the end of the book, this kind of what I call the state of Judea, the settler state that is taking over Israel, a more theocratic, more extreme version of Zionism, messianic Zionism, that takes over Israel slowly and gradually, first electorally, but also through the apparatus of the army, the Secret Service, the Mossad, the universities. All these old elites are giving in to a new kind of messianic Zionism that is far more powerful than the secular or liberal sort of, so to speak, Zionism. Both of them believed in apartheid Israel, but they had different versions of apartheid Israel. And so I think, again, I don't like tactical commentary, whether gallant, it matters so much. Not because I don't respect this kind of commentary. I'm just, maybe because I'm an historian, I'm much more interested in the wider picture. And the wider picture is that this internal implosion is another crack in the structure, and a very important crack. And the 7th of October widened extensively that crack as well. And I think that's something to follow and look at. As for Colombia, Muslim Zionists, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this phenomenon because we know the names of all of them. Yeah. As for Colombia and the global South, yes, it is. Of course, it is very important. We have this global Israel and global Palestine, and we have the beginning of countries in the global South willing to go beyond boycott and divestment into real sanction, ceding diplomatic relationship. We need the global North to follow. But maybe that's the historical process. You begin with the global South, you move to the civil society in the global North, and hopefully the country, also the states, the governments in the future of the global North would do this. We need this kind of isolation. We need this kind of pressure. And we need, and that's very difficult to ask the people in Gaza and the West Bank, but we need to hold our breath because it will take a bit of time for this to unfold. But it's not fair to say to the people who need this, not tomorrow, but yesterday. So we have to double and triple also our efforts, at least to give some hope for the end of the genocide, even if it doesn't mean yet the kind of liberation that we are all dreaming about.
Yeah, I mean, I have read the Quran so many times. I've never heard about this kind of rubbish. But there's a lot of rubbish on the internet. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, by the way. And it's usually one person who kind of spreads all these lies. And I think there is that immediate thing, which is called elections in Britain and in the US. And there is the choice between these two terrible people. One is called Joe genocide, and the other one is Trump genocide. I mean, these are terrible choices, but there is also, the Zionist lobby in America is a coalition, is a wide coalition, but there's an element in that Zionist lobby which is incredibly dangerous and extremely dangerous, and these are the Armageddon theology people. We don't know how many followers they have. Some people think they have tens of thousands of votes, evangelical votes, and they will give their votes to Trump. They think Trump is somehow a new messiah. But the threat from that direction, I mean, some of these organizations, till evangelical organizations, they have millions of followers. John Hagee has got about 2 million followers, and he seems to be pouring a lot of money in Israeli settlements, and in also Israeli settlements in Silwan, in Palestine, Israeli archaeology, and also the risk of these people. They are actually celebrating genocide. They're not just, their idea of expediting the Messiah and Greater Israel and the support for Israel is also focuses on who is impeding the coming of the Messiah. And the Palestinians are seen to be in the way of impeding the coming of the Messiah. Therefore, the question of eliminating the Palestinians, the question of genocide in Gaza, they seem to be incredibly proud of it and incredibly celebrating it. It's a strange kind of phenomena. It's not reported very much in the British media, but I've come across a lot of statements for some of the people saying Palestine's finished, that's it. So the risk for those supporters of Greater Israel in America with so many votes, and also with the idea that you expediting the Messiah by creating Greater Israel, also you have to eliminate those people who are in the way of the Messiah or Greater Israel, and the Palestinians seems to be kind of in the way of things. There's a lot of, if you like, I shall call it, they call it Armageddon theology. I want to call it a genocidal theology. and that implication is also, it seems to be impacted on the US in particular, less on Britain, because Britain is more of a secular society here. And it's more, I mean, someone like Sunak, who's a Hindu Zionist, he's an opportunist also. He thinks, there's a mileage in that kind of mentality. I notice Sajid Javid, the British cabinet secretary, when he was home secretary, also wanted to celebrate the Balfour Declaration, which I thought very strange for a Muslim cabinet secretary wanted to celebrate the Balfour Declaration in Britain. But again, it's that kind of opportunism of some of these people, and I think they need to be exposed. and that hypocrisy need to be exposed. So that kind of collection of hypocritical people are usually opportunists, and they think the Zionists are so powerful. Let's be on their side, if you like. And I think that trend is slightly different from the American Armageddon theology people, who are incredibly dangerous, incredibly also believe in that nonsense, also pouring a lot of money into Israeli settlements and into settlements in East Jerusalem, for instance.
I want to make 2 points. First one, to address the colleague from Colombia and the need to isolate the Zionist state. In fact, a global anti-apartheid movement is beginning to take shape, particularly from the south, starting in the south, but with tremendous support from the global north also. Much of the leadership is coming from Africa, from South Africa, and what we call the frontline states during the anti-apartheid struggle. A conference was organized in Johannesburg about 2 weeks ago, and the foundations were laid for that. People from your part of the world, from Bolivia in particular, Brazil, were there, and I'm hopeful that we would see in the near future some developments on that front. A point I want to make before we close off is that on the issue of lobbying, we're not speaking about governments only. We're speaking about the role of the lobby in the media. And in Ilan's book, he spoke about people who worked with the BBC. Andrew Falls, who was dismissed from the BBC because of his pro-Palestinian stance. And when we look at how the debate is being framed by the BBC in the context of recent events, let's say the celebration, commemoration of D-Day, and the right of the French to resist, and Britain to help, its noble acts of support for the French resistance against occupation. Juxtapose that with what's happening in Palestine, you see. And the BBC, at the beginning in October last year, whenever they mentioned the word Hamas, they had to say Hamas is designated a terrorist organization by the government. Every time a newscaster uttered the word Hamas, she or he had to say this. And that contributed to the shaping of the framing of your understanding of what's happening in Palestine, and to negate the right of the Palestinian people to resist. Many of us in this room probably are too scared to say that resistance is lawful when your country is occupied by a foreign force, you see. But it was lawful in Ukraine, as Liz Truss called upon British people to go and fight for the Ukrainians, but she would never had called for anyone to go to Palestine, who were also under occupation. So when we talk about the lobby and its power, it should not only be confined to governments, but also to the media, which plays an important role in shaping our understanding of the issues.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. I have many hands still, but this is going to be the final round. We only have about 10 to 15 minutes at most, after which I'm going to ask Ilan only to come back, if I may. So I am going to ask everyone not to be more than 20 seconds. Okay? And I'm going to cut them off. So, Dr. Maha, the gentleman there, from this side, this gentleman, that gentleman, and this lady. Okay, we'll take these very quick comments. Please, Dr. Maha here. Apologies to anyone whom I'm passing by. Yes, please. Yeah, good. Okay, done. Tafadhal.
Thank you, Professor Ilan, and to the panelists, and I very much look forward to reading the book. There is a bit of lobbying that's going to come up more clearly, which is worrying me, although it was very interesting hearing about the history of the lobbies in America and in the UK, and the continuing lobbying, as Dr. Abdullah said, through the media and so on. But it's the political agenda that I am most fearful of. and the next stage, where we're going to hear more and more talk of establishing a Palestinian state. And we're hearing it from Cameron and various politicians in the West in order to save the colonial settler state of Israel. And the buy-in in that lobbying that's going to come from Arab leaders and Palestinians themselves. And it is, I think, that stage that I am most fearful of and for which we've got to be prepared, because the resistance on the ground has been formidable, it has been strong, and the Palestinian people have resisted for 76 years and have shown their greatest resilience today in Gaza. We must not lose that. And it is how we stand up to this new lobbying, this idea that there can be a political solution that's going to reinvent Gaza in some way through support of the treacherous Arab regimes, and with them the Western politicians that will stand with them. I think that is the challenge, and I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very quickly, thank you.
Yes, under the circumstances, I'll forego my question for one of the ladies, but I just want to say that I have it on good authority that when Michael Gove was at university, he was pro-Palestinian.
Yeah.
Right, if that's so,
Correct.
then I don't know what happened to him. Secondly, I read that Edward Said was taken around the settlements by his friend Israel Shahak, and he was very hopeful the settlement was going to be destroyed. And Israel Shahak told him, no, there's only two things that's going to happen to destroy these settlements. One is an act of God. And the second is a mighty military. Nothing else is going to destroy these settlements.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, just behind, and then I'm coming to the lady in the middle. Yes.
I'm replying to one of the questions from, I think it was Dr. Jada. She asked, was there anything similar to Zionism? Yes, there is Ulster Unionism. That started in 1614. And Balfour set up a Protestant parliament for a Protestant people. But the gallant and brave IRA got rid of it. But now the Ulster Unionists, they're on their last legs because we, the native Irish, have outnumbered the settlers.
Thank you very much.
Ulster Unionism is going to end, and Zionism is going to end. And I have a brief question. The question is, should a new anti-apartheid movement be set up to deal with the way we dealt with apartheid in South Africa? Should it be set up again to deal with apartheid in Israel?
Thank you very much. The lady there at the back, raise your hands, please. Raise your hand so the microphone can come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, why is Egypt and Saudi Arabia not part of the Global South and supporting the Palestinian cause? I'm just wondering what made them turn.
Excellent. Thank you. And can I have the lady there? Just the lady over there? There we go.
I just wanted to ask, how do you interpret the significance of the Zionist lobby's use of Islamophobic tropes to delegitimize the Palestinian resistance and activism in the UK and the US, and whether that could be the explanation behind the odd union that we see between the fascists and the Zionist lobby, that they're prioritizing the Muslim problem over the Jewish problem?
Thank you very much. And I will take the gentleman here, and then we'll come to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the panel and to Professor Ilham. My name is Shabir. I'm a Muslim, but with a Semite, with a Hebrew name. So there are Muslims with a Semitic sort of name as well. My question is very quickly. One, Professor Ilham was talking about that the politicians of today are really ignorant, stupid, unenlightened, you know, all the words I can't remember that he used. But we also see the youngsters in the universities in USA and here are really going against the creme de la creme universities, whether it's Oxford, London. At one time when I was studying in London in the 70s, LSE, Essex, Warwick were sort of a hotbed of revolution, but now they've become right-wing universities. So is there something going wrong with the elite institute itself that has brought about this sort of shallowness of the leaders of today? That's one question. Finally, quick question. We haven't talked about Iran's role and how it has supported the axis of resistance.
Thank you very much. Ilan. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna hear from Ilan, but I'm also going to come to every member of the panel for a final word, as well as to come back on some of the comments. But please, Ilan.
Yeah. Let me start with the two-state solution and the worry that this would come now as a paradigm that dominates the conversation on Palestine, or maybe even lead to an attempt to impose it. I'm less worried about it, I must say, than you are, because I think that the talk about the two-state solution now pales in comparison to the talk about the two states during the time of Oslo. The time of Oslo, the two-state was a Nobel Peace Prize celebration, and yet it evaporated. It disappeared. I think the same will happen now. It's a conversation that was already irrelevant to the reality on the ground in 1993. It's even less relevant today to what goes on. The way the Israeli electorate is moving towards the right, the large number of settlers in the West Bank, the mood among the global society and the global South. I think that we will hear a lot about the two-state solution from all those actors who are interested in maintaining the status quo rather than changing it. So I think that it's not going to happen. It's unfortunate because it wastes energy and time and space for the more important discussion. And that's what the two-state solution did. For so many years, we wasted time and energy, because building a one-state is also not an easy project. But we wasted 56 years of not talking about it and not building it. So that is the main worry for me, rather than I can see this. In fact, I changed my mind about the recognition of Palestine. I don't know what Noor and Rada feel about it. I remember when it came about 10 years ago, I was afraid that the recognition of Palestine meant recognizing the Bantustan of Area A, the greater Ramallah area. And I said, why are we pushing for an international recognition of a Bantustan? I think today this goes much more with a symbolic recognition that Palestine is still there. It's against denialism that this kind of recognition comes in the wake of the way the Americans and the British and the others are giving immunity to Israel. So it's not about recognizing Palestine in a certain geographical space. It's making sure that Palestine does not disappear, and this is part of the transformation that I hope will come to the politics from above and not just politics from below. There was a question about the academic lobby. Well, I think, I'm sorry, about the lobby in the academia. It came out in different questions here, so I'll summarize it together. Yes, I do talk in the book about how the academia is used within the lobby structure, but and it comes back to how the universities react to the encampments and student movements. We have to remember that universities are two things. There are managements and almost run like businesses, and there are also community of scholars. As management and businesses, they are definitely following the government and the politics from above. As communities, like the rest of the civil society, I think they offer something different, and therefore it's part of my hope for different kind of politics, which also would include the way universities react, and maybe they will be part of this global anti-apartheid movement that was mentioned here, which I call Global Palestine, that needs to confront global Israel. The global Israel, which is made of countries in the global north, multinational corporation, security firms, military industries, Christian Zionists, and unfortunately still some Jewish communities. There was a question about if my book in the US because I was detained. No, I don't think it will be a problem. Novin is here, and he told me the book was already printed in the US, so we smuggled it in. No, it's okay. It's working in the US. Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Well, I think that like so many other parts of the world, we have rulers. We don't have leaders. We used to have leaders in the Arab world, but now we have rulers. Rulers work differently than leaders, and we just would have to hope that even from their perspective of efficiency or what they would deem as profitable politically or economically, whatever, they would find that supporting Israel or even the two-state solution is not beneficial. But this would not be out of a moral assessment or because of taking a lead, but just because as rulers, it contributes to they would think that it contributes to their survival as leaders. So we need a change there as well. Islamophobia, yes, of course, it's one of the many ways that Israel weaponizes ideas in order to silence criticism on Israel and suppress the freedom of expression. One, of course, is accusing everyone who criticizes Israel as being either a Holocaust denier or an anti-Semite, and then trying to show that Israel is fighting against Islamic extremism, and it's the only real hope for defending Europe from the danger of Islamic radicalism and so on. So it is part of it. It was always part of it. I think Noor mentioned Lloyd George. One of the things Lloyd George wrote is, God forbid if the Muslim would rule the Holy Land. So Islamophobia was also part of the support for Zionism earlier on, not just nowadays. And it's worthwhile of a good research. We don't have it. Maybe some of you, the younger generation, who in a university would take it on. It's a good topic for a PhD to work on. I'm willing to supervise it with Noor together. With Noor together. Okay, Iran. Yes, of course, the regional, as a regional power, it puts a counter force to the United States, to the power of Israel. My very modest contribution to this is that Iran, that respects a bit more the rights of its own citizens, would be even more powerful as an influence on the region, and we need Iran to influence the region. But it needs also to get its own acts together. You cannot do this as it stands now, and it has the power. It has the power to de-Americanize the Middle East, to create a different kind of realities that bring us back to the live and let live matrix and mosaic that used to be the Eastern Mediterranean in particular before the arrival of Zionism and before the colonialist power imposed the nation-state, Westphalian nation-state idea on the Eastern Mediterranean through the Sykes-Picot Agreement and all the agreements that came behind it. So we need Iraq, we need Turkey, we need the regional powers, but in order, they also have to go through some reforms in order to be a powerful influencer on the well-being and future of everyone who lives in that region.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ilan. Bravo.
Yes, thank you. Okay. I'm going to be very brief because I can see how time has gone on. Just a few very small points, because Ilan has answered the points raised so fully and so correctly. First of all, the question about the Palestine state, I really understand your anxiety. I really do. However, I too have chosen to, or have decided that it needs to be seen as a recognition of Palestinian statehood, meaning the right to statehood. That if we look at it like that, then I think it puts it into a better light. The gentleman who talked about Ulster is spot on, because actually the parallel for what has happened in Palestine, the better parallel, other than apartheid South Africa, is Ireland. The story of Ireland is so instructive. There are so many points of comparison and of agreement between our histories. So thank you for bringing that up. And finally, just about Egypt, Saudi Arabia, one of our tragedies in the Arab world is not only that the role of imperialism and what it led to in terms of setting up Israel, destroying the Palestinians. It destroyed the Arab world, really. And we need to see it much more like that in the context of these states are not real states in the proper sense of the word. They're not fully independent. They've come into being, they've had a bit of luck because they've got oil and they've got a bit of money. But other than that, really they have to be seen as a tragic outcome themselves of imperialism, Western imperialism. And, my final word, of course, the evening belongs to Ilan. And thanks again, Ilan, for producing this wonderful book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I do want to second that and thank Ilan for his brilliance. Also, it's a lifelong, actually, struggle with us, actually. So it's not tonight, it's not last year. You've been around for such a long time. And it gives me tremendous, actually, hope that you are with us. Let me just focus on this question of Kamran. Maha said something about Kamran, actually, too. I actually won't worry too much about Kamran. He's maneuvering. I won't even worry about Starmer. He's also maneuvering. He wants a Palestinian state with a peace process. When was the last time we had a peace process? 20 years ago? 30 years? 50 years ago? It just lies. I think we need to be careful about these lies and not take them always very seriously, but they are actually problematic. But Ilan actually pointed out there is something interesting happening with Spain, with Ireland, with Norway, with more countries joining in. Spain is mentioning sanctions. This is happening, and symbolically is important actually for us, happening from above. So, but I think to give us hope, us as activists, and Palestinians and people who need to give some sort of guidance, if you like, some sort of guiding hand. I think we need to say Palestinians have the right to resist, they have the right to self-determination, they have the right to to demonstrate against apartheid, down with apartheid, boycott the state of Israel, BDS. All these things are happening around us and in the demonstrations, in the student movements, on campuses, the divestment. I think we have a lot of energy coming from below, from the younger generation, whether it's in Palestine or here. And I think this gives us a lot of hope, and hopefully also will impact on people from above and those who are in powers. But I do see a great deal of change within British society for the first time in years and years and years. And I think it kind of surprised me how much British society from below, lawyers, civilians, professionals, artists, producers, an awful lot of people are coming and actually joining in. This gives us a lot of energy, a lot of hope, a lot of inspiration. And I think we should be proud of it, and we should keep pushing it. Thank you so much.
I'll close on one of the highlights of the book. One of the things that stood out to me is the myth that has been propagated throughout America for many decades. And that is, if you want to be a good Jew, you have to be a Zionist. And if you have to be a Zionist, you must go to Israel. If you can't go to Israel, then support it. This has been deconstructed in the book, and it delinks the whole question of Zionism, anti-Zionism, and anti-Semitism. And I think that is crucial in terms of our understanding and our approach to the support for the Palestinian people, that we don't conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, as the ruling authorities in Israel would like us to believe, and their lobby.
Thank you very much. Okay. Everyone, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, if you bear with me just for 1 minute, I'd like to firstly thank all the staff and volunteers from the Cordoba Foundation Memo and One World Publications who have put together tonight. Remind you once again, don't leave without a copy, probably even a few copies. The recordings will be available on the organizers' platforms. And please do support and get involved with the Cordoba Foundation and with Middle East Monitor. Tonight has been a pleasure, but like Ghada said, tonight belongs to Ilan Pappé. He's not only a brilliant author, he's not only a brilliant academic, but let's use the proper words. He is a courageous, ethical, moral compass for all of us. He's a model. And thank you, everyone. Thank you.